Spirited Away movie review. So this is the Japanese anime movie that came out in July of 2001. I arrived in Japan in August of 2001 and I stayed in Japan for the next 8 years, so August 2001 to 2009. And during the time I was in Japan, I arrived just after this movie got released, but really for those whole 8 years, this movie was huge in Japan. Especially the summer I first arrived, when this movie first got released, I just remember seeing posters for it everywhere. All the kids were talking about it. The Japanese school teachers at the school I worked at were talking about it. Then it got released on DVD, and it seemed like every time I was invited over to a Japanese person's house, they'd be playing this DVD on their TV. It got played in schools all the time. It just was so omnipresent. The Japanese title for this movie, by the way, is Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi. Excuse my bad pronunciation. But I would normally hear people refer to it as Sen to Chihiro. That's how they referred to this movie. So over the years, I got the feeling that I had seen all of this movie in some form. Meaning I'd seen so many bits and pieces of it that I was sure if you had put all those bits and pieces together, it must equal out the whole movie. But I had never, for some reason, sat down and watched the whole movie from start to finish. But then after I left Japan, I decided to rent it and finally watch this movie and watch it from start to finish. And yeah, what to say about this movie, huh? This is one of those movies that's difficult to review because so many people have already praised it. Both Japanese critics, but also Western critics. A lot of people have had very nice things to say about this movie. So I don't really know what's left to say, except to just repeat what everyone else has already said. So with apologies, I'm just going to repeat what everyone else has already said about this movie. It's wonderfully imaginative. The characters are very bizarre and wonderfully realized. The plot has been compared to Alice in Wonderland, yeah, that's apt. It is kind of like Alice in Wonderland. But it's also very Japanese. I mean, the whole idea of having a bathhouse for the spirit gods is an incredibly Japanese concept. So you get a real flavor of Japanese mythology, and yet it doesn't get bogged down in its own mythology like some Japanese films do. There's a good pace to this movie. Just as you're trying to absorb and take in the wonder of one scene, you get whisked off to another scene. So the pacing is pretty perfect that way. Chances are you've already seen this film, but if you haven't, be sure to check it out.